What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel, your go-to place for all things Lions related, including news, updates, and analysis. Today, we get to do the analysis portion with another Scout Your Opponent video. Morgan, this is probably one of the easier scouting videos we're going to do. Jacksonville has not been playing the best football this season, sitting at 2-8 on the season. But if you ask Dan Campbell, I feel like this is very similar to when we talked about the Titans. Dan is going to tell you, like, hey, any given Sunday, every team can give you their best shot. And that's very much the case with Jacksonville. They won't have Trevor Lawrence this week, so they will have Mac Jones starting at quarterback. But there are some pieces both on the offensive and defensive side of the football that I think the Lions still have to be mindful of so that, again, they don't get caught off guard, right?
Yeah, like it's still the NFL. You know what I'm saying? Like I know they're 2-8, but at the end of the day, these guys get paid too. They're just, they've lost some close games. Like, yeah, they've got their doors blown off a couple times. Like I think they went to Buffalo and lost like 47-10 earlier in the year. So like it's happened, but they played some close games too. Like they went to the wire with the Packers not that long ago. Lost a tough game to the Eagles 28-23 on November 3rd. So can't take them lightly. The good thing is Dan Campbell seems like he preaches that pretty consistently, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna get everyone's best shot, he said today in his media availability. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it. Like as long as they get ready to play and take care of business, maybe we can get some more hidden hooker action going, that kind of thing.
Yeah, this definitely, for me, at least has the feeling of like a possible trap game, if for only because like they're coming off such an emotional game last week against the Texans where, again, the Texans jumped on them early, took a lot to get in, to get the comeback going and to get back into that game. Again, you have to hope that the guys come in this week with that same level of focus and hopefully with like a chip on their shoulder, especially on the offensive side of like, hey, we want to be able to prove that like what you guys saw from us last week is not what the Detroit Lions are about. So I think there are some things with how the Jaguars have played defense this year. They've been giving up chunks of yards, right? Like, I mean, near the bottom when it comes down to, yards per game given up and things of that nature, which is weird because I think they have some quality players on that defensive line and in that linebacking core. When you start talking about Trayvon Walker, when you talk about Josh Hines Allen, Devin Lloyd, there's a number of quality players on that defense, but yeah, for some reason, like things are just not clicking in Jacksonville this year.
Yeah, man, to put it lightly, right? Like they're dead last, it was second to, let me correct myself here. They're second to last in EPA per play, and they're also second to last in defensive DVOA. So tough look on the defensive side of the ball for sure. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. But yeah, we're gonna get into it. Like they have good players. That's what we were talking about. Like you mentioned it at the top. Like they do on both sides of the ball. But just right now, it's just not coming together, man. They do some boneheaded stuff, and
yeah. And so with an offense, let's start with the offensive side. With an offense that's not going to have Trevor Lawrence, I think there is this overall prevailing feeling, oh, okay, we should be able to just run through the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. But I think both Tank Bigsby and Brian Thomas are two young guys on this offense that are actually like having very impressive season. Tank is currently leading them in rushing yards while Brian Thomas is leading them in passing yards. So first we're going to look at Tank. And Morgan, I actually like a lot of the things that I'm seeing from Tank. First of all, amazing first name, but also just a great decisive runner. You give him a lane and he's not gonna mess around with you.
Yeah, and then offensively they are 16th overall in DVOA, so like they're better on offensive side of the ball. And you see it here. This is blocked really well. If you watch Morse, their center, he's a good player, plays well in spurts, but beats Jelani Tavai pretty handedly here. Tavai tries to engage, and Morse swats his hands down as he climbs up to the linebacker and just lays on him. And that's what allows Bigsby to climb to that second level. So they will execute like this. Doug Peterson is a good coach. He showed, they won a Super Bowl, with Nick Foles. So he's a good coach. But yeah, just now you don't have Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you probably know that. So even though he hasn't been playing well himself, like it's been up and down for T-Law, like you'd still rather have Trevor Lawrence than Mac Jones 11 times out of 10, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're talking a lot about Tank Bigsby because, like I said, you have plays like that where, like you said, it's blocked really well. I think he has great vision. I think he does a really good job of deciding on where he wants to go when running the football, right? Again, not a ton of dancing in the backfield with a play like this where it's a pitch play. You expect this to probably go outside. He quickly recognizes like, hey, there's nothing on the outside. Let me get north and south and pick up as many yards as I can. And that's something that he's in his second year, Morgan, but this is things that take running backs a while to learn to get out of those habits of like, oh, let me just go where the play is designed.
Yeah, this is a veteran run. I love it from that angle from behind, but like this one too, right? He sees you get that pitch, and he sees the edge is just being obliterated. There's just way too many deep defenders out there. So he puts his foot in the ground, gets north and south, and when he's approaching the line, that little crease opens up, and he's able to step through. Puts a good move on the safety at the top of the play. That's actually a pretty good tackle by 29 up there. Exactly, Xavier McKinney. But yeah, just
again, a touchdown.
For sure, because that man if that wasn't Xavier McKinney, if that's a lesser safety, that's probably a pretty easy touchdown. But yeah, good play, because this is a veteran. This is something I would expect from Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I know Ja's not a veteran, but we know that guy's the vision is there.
Just like Tank. Absolutely. And that's the other thing too. Like you bring up, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, Jacksonville does have two good running backs as well. They're just now getting Travis Etienne back. He's been back a couple weeks, but clearly still getting some of the rust off after dealing with an injury. But that's another running back that you have to contend with as well. Like he's another, like, I wouldn't necessarily say a change of pace, but they use him in a different way. You see Travis Etienne get used a lot in the passing game, so it's something that the Lions are going to have to be mindful of when these running backs are being switched out, whether it's Tank or whether it's Etienne. Like they may lean on both of those running backs to kind of make Mac Jones' job a little bit easier come Sunday.
Yeah, that's going to be your hope if you're Jacksonville, right? It's like threefold when you're running. If you can run the ball well, like especially against a team like the Lions, you're helping Mac Jones out, and you're obviously establishing the run to making it easier for him, but then you're also keeping the Lions offense off the field. But as we know, like the Lions had their struggles last week against Houston, but man, that run defense was absolutely phenomenal. And then Joe Mixon was like 25 for like 46 yards. That's incredible. Tall task. Jacksonville's offensive line isn't playing terribly. Like I already highlighted Morse. They got Brandon Scherf at right guard. Little and Harrison round out the tackles. Anton Harrison's their first round pick from last year. But yeah, nothing to write home about. So I think establishing a run, especially the Ford Field crowd, is going to be amped up. We haven't had a home game in a minute. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think like when you start to go into the passing game, right, we talked about like the focus that we're going to have today is at least on Brian Thomas, but they do have some other good pass catchers out there as well. They have Evan Ingram, who's still a very viable tight end that has to be accounted for. They have Christian Kirk, again, another savvy veteran that can definitely take over a game if not accounted for properly. But yeah, for me and Morgan, it's Brian Thomas, and it's Brian Thomas by a mile, because he is a big play threat every time he is on the field.
Yeah, and I like Brian Thomas coming out of LSU. The man can fly, just flat out. Like you see him, he just runs by Christian Gonzalez here. And this is a really good ball from Trevor Lawrence, like drops that thing in the bucket. Because it's Christian Gonzalez, I give him some credit. He caught up and got kind of back in phase, but just dropped that thing in the bucket. So yeah, he's someone you're going to have to be just aware of, because you don't want to give Jacksonville any cheap stuff like on a busted coverage where they get an easy touchdown, because that's how you make a team like them, a 2-8 team, not to be disrespectful, but like that's how you instill confidence in a team that's like, oh my gosh, like maybe we could come in here and steal a win from the best team in football, but you got to snuff that out early. You know what I'm saying? Like do them like they did Tennessee. Like Tennessee had a little bit going there for a little bit, had a little motion, and then they got strangled out of them pretty quickly.
And I think that's the thing that like makes me focus on Brian Thomas, because I do think he could have that type of Calvin Ridley type of start against the Lions if they decide to feature him early, where Calvin Ridley had over 100 yards before halftime, and it was like, hey, is the defense going to bother covering him at all? And obviously they did in the second half, where he was basically erased from the game. But Brian Thomas has that, and on top of that, he has the big playability. And so whether it's Terrion Arnold that has to take that responsibility on, or Carlton Davis, like both of those corners, as well as your safeties and Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, have to be mindful of where he is and where he's lining up and the type of routes he's running. And at the same time, be mindful, but not be so quick to jump the gun, because we see it in this play here where the nickel thinks he knows what Brian Thomas is going to run, and then eventually, puts the rest of his secondary, at a disadvantage.
Yeah, and you never know what the actual call is for the defender here, but you can tell that the nickel gets caught peeking, right? The outside receiver runs a stop route essentially, and then Brian Thomas is able to just sneak up the boundary there, and that's easy money. That's what we don't want, right? Because that's the Colts not executing on defense and making things easy for the offense. So yeah, someone 20 right there for Indy. He got caught in no man's land. So that's going to be a tough film session. Would you go on?
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's where it's so important for your secondary to be on the same page, because you're right. We don't necessarily know what the coverage is, but both corners stop at the exact same point, and they don't know who is supposed to carry Brian Thomas up the sideline. And so again, it's not that they did it's not like they have never practiced this before, but there clearly wasn't clear communication of hey, if this happens, I'm going to take this person and you take this person. That's where the Lions have to be very much on point, because, if, for example, if the nickel is responsible for at least covering the flat, but the minute he notices that Brian Thomas is supposed to go vertical, if he's supposed to carry him up the sideline, then he has to leave that other receiver that ran the curl route to the outside corner, or again, vice versa. If they're switching that, then there needs to be communication hey, if this happens, I'm going to take the inside man and you're going to cover the short route. It's simple communication that typically happens, I'm assuming, in position rooms with your secondary coach, so that you guys don't have things like this happen, because this is an 85-yard touchdown, Morgan. No defense wants to see that happen.
No, and a layup at that. But yeah, you said it all. That conversation needs to be had, during the week, and then especially pre-snap, right? It's tough to communicate in the moment, especially in the secondary. So yeah, it's almost like an offensive line, man, passing things off, passing off games, passing off stunts. There's a lot of correlations, in my opinion, between a secondary and an O-line. So that's sometimes the way my brain thinks about it. So they're not a good offensive team. They're a competent offensive team at times.
It's an offense that has potential, right? Clearly things are not clicking right now. Like you said, they won't have Trevor Lawrence on Sunday, but even when he's been in, things just haven't clicked well right now. And who knows, right? Maybe it's an issue with the offensive coordinator. Maybe it's the head coach. There's a number of things that go into why a team just isn't able to click. But when you look at the Jaguars on paper, both on the offensive and defensive side, you feel like they should be better than what their record shows, which is why I think you still have to take them serious, especially on the defensive side, because when you have a Josh Hines-Allen and a Trayvon Walker, both of those guys are capable of taking over a game. Trayvon Walker currently leads Jacksonville with 7.5 sacks. Josh Hines-Allen is currently second on the team with 5. And both of these guys are capable of getting to the quarterback. And sometimes, Morgan, it feels like they might just be flat out racing to see who can get there first.
Yeah, they can pose problems if you don't come ready to play. And this is a funny one, because both Zach Tom and then their left tackle, they're supposed to get for this kind of block, you want to get your defender on the ground, because you're trying to clear out a passing lane for Malik Willis, preferably to this screen down here to Jaden Reed, I'm assuming. But he looks at the slant. Neither of those dudes get on the ground, and that's basically who can get Malik on the ground first is going to get the bucket. So ugly play from Green Bay. This explains why Green Bay went to the wire, or part of the reason why they went to the wire with Jacksonville.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like both of these guys have to be happy that the NFL decides to split sacks, because they both literally do get there at the same time. So they both get half a sack. No one has to argue about who gets full credit for it. But yeah, both of these guys are dangerous when it comes down to getting. But yeah, Morgan, one thing that I am also very impressed with when it comes to the Jaguars is the progression of Trayvon Walker. I think a lot of people questioned him going first overall over Aiden Hutchinson when they were drafted. And not saying that it's looking like the right decision right now, because obviously Aiden had just as many sacks as Trayvon Walker currently does, but 3 weeks ago. But Trayvon Walker is definitely putting it together, and you are starting to see what made him such an appealing draft prospect, because he's starting to put it all together. This move right here is terrifying.
Yeah, he's the reason he went 1 is because people looked at, he's 6'5", 270-ish, freaky deaky, like what did he run, like a 4.4? Was it something stupid?
4.4, 4.5, something crazy like that.
Something dumb. So, and he's putting it together, right? So you watch this move. We talk about converting speed to power a lot. And essentially, if you want to make that really simple for people who are listening, it's when you're threatening the edge as an edge rusher, and then you convert that speed to power, and you get your hand in the tackle's chest, and you're able to knock him back. This, he like hits like a little Euro step, then, heavy hand sends a jolt through the right tackle, and then he rips under, right? So rip, and then a strip sack like that. They'll show that in, defensive line camps around the country, around the world. That was a beautiful rush, man. That's like something that warms my heart. Just a little Euro step, thunder in his hands, right arm rip, strip sack. That's beautiful.
And this is stuff that he didn't have in his tool belt like 2 years ago, right? Like he was very much like the athletic edge. He was, like you said, he was the great combination of size and speed. And that's what he was able to use when he was at Georgia to win. And it was what he was able to use those first couple of years in Jacksonville to at least find success. But now when he's starting to put these other elements of his game together, you're starting to put more technique. You're starting to differentiate your rush package. Like, that's where you become a nightmare for opposing offenses. And the thing that Jacksonville has is that they have a guy like this, but they also have a guy on the other side in Josh Hines-Allen that is just as capable and who has been doing it for a longer period of time in terms of being a quality pass rusher. But you give Josh Hines-Allen a Trayvon Walker, and it almost just makes his job a lot easier, as we're going to see on this play here.
Yeah, this is like definitely a play that the crowd that's like, we need an edge rusher opposite of Hutchinson is going to chime in, right? Because Josh Pascal's a good player, but like this is the benefit of it, right? So Trayvon Walker wins again to the inside of the right tackle, and Flacco has to step up, and Josh Hines-Allen is a veteran rusher. Honestly, man, that was the guy I wanted in the Hockenson draft. I remember being at the draft party, and I was like, if we could heat one more pick, and then he got taken. Then we took Hockenson. I'm not being a Hockenson hater either. I'm just saying Josh Allen would have been nice. It was Josh Allen then. But yeah, good player, man. They got a good front. Really, their defensive woes stem from their defensive backs just having a lot of trouble. Like we saw it a little bit earlier with communication, pre-snap communication, post-snap communication, and then just sticking with guys. Like when you turn on their tape, guys are getting open pretty quickly, right? So yeah, that's a tough ask going against the Lions' offensive arsenal, especially after they just had a pretty crappy showing in Houston. I'm sure they want to, like Dan Campbell's talking today, he wants to get back to being efficient. That has to be some scary words if I'm either a Jaguars fan, to be honest. Like that's kind of rough.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes you feel like Ben Johnson's going to be in the lab this week. Like, all right, so what ways can we just, like it I don't think necessarily in a way of like embarrassing Jacksonville, but like, again, I think there's a lot there. There was definitely some chatter, right? This week after how the offense looked, specifically how Jared Goff looked against Houston. There was some chatter about like, okay, well, can the Lions really win it all with that quarterback or with that type of offensive performance? And if they're not, clicking on all cylinders, can they really hang with people? I think Ben Johnson would want to come out this week and be like, let me show you, right? And it's going to be everybody. Like, and I think that's what makes this a really tough matchup for Jacksonville, is because while I think they do have a really good defensive front and they do have really good linebackers, it's the fact that they can hit you with so many different areas. And what Jacksonville doesn't have that Houston did, which is a solid secondary, right? Like Houston has Petrie. They have Derek Stingley. Like they have guys on the outside that were able to challenge and make things difficult for not just Goff, but for the receivers as well. If Jacksonville's receivers can't hang with Amon-Ra, if they can't hang with J-Mo, like this could be a career type of day, for Jared Goff and for this offense. And like we said, they seem to probably have that motivation of like being able to prove like, hey, last week was a fluke. Last week we got caught slipping. This is who we are. And so I think that's, again, if you're a Lions fan, that's exciting, right? That's what you should be expecting to see. If you're a Jags fan, I say this respectfully, you might want to find other things to do tomorrow, after like the first or second quarter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, we always try to be pretty objective on here, like when we do these videos, and we typically come up with ways that a team like they could beat the Lions, even as they've gone on this like long winning streak here this season. But yeah, the Lions would have to do a lot. A lot would have to go wrong for Jacksonville to come out on top here, especially like you said, it's just a tough matchup. Their offense could do a little something, maybe. We'll see. I think the defense is going to be pretty jacked up again, too. They had a really good performance, almost like the opposite of what the offense is going through. Like, really, it's just 1 week. Man, the offense was going. That's what's so funny. It's just kind of, we're spoiled as a fan base. Like, for 4 or 5 weeks there, Goff and the offense were operating at, like, historic paces and numbers. And then they had the one game, and everyone's like, well, is it a problem? Is it? I'm like, calm. You will see Sunday.
It's an overreaction, right? And I think that's, to your point, right? If you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan and you're watching this, like, so you guys are just saying there's no chance. No. I think
a chance.
The way that it would have to happen is that the two guys that we talked about on your defense, Trayvon Walker, Josh Hines-Allen, even Devin Lloyd, Eric Armstead, like those guys are going to have to put so much pressure on Jared Goff, and they're going to have to do what Houston was able to do, which is force turnovers. And you're going to have to force multiple turnovers.
Yeah.
On top of that, you're going to have to convert those turnovers into points. And I think that's where things get dicey. But if they can do it, and they do have the talent, Morgan, on that defensive line, especially if Taylor Decker doesn't play again this week, like, pray for Dan Skipper if he has to play. Right?
Yeah, I hope Decker can go. And then if you are a Jags fan and you're watching this and you're not super familiar, the Lions' offensive line is the best in football. It's the best player in football, in my opinion, right tackle Penei Sewell. So one of those guys is going to have a tough go of it, and then hopefully Decker's up, because that'd be nice. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of Brock Wright over there, a lot of Shane Zylstra to help out, and they'll figure it out. But I'm with you. It's the NFL, man. You can still win games. Like that's the thing, right? Like very rarely are teams just pummeled from the get-go. Like the Titans kept it close for a little bit there before the dam broke,
Yeah, so, and I don't think that's going to happen every single week. Could it happen this week? Maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't think, like, again, I don't think that's something that you can expect to see every single week. Even if we feel like it's a lopsided matchup, I don't think the Lions can necessarily going to go out here and hang 50-40 on the Jaguars, right? Like,
yeah. At the end of the day, we just want a dub, stack another one. I want that one seed, man. That's where my brain's at now. It's a once a week. We're fans, though, so we can look ahead a little bit. I'm already thinking about that magic number, man. What do the Lions need to get to guarantee the one seed? And it's looking like 13, 14 wins. So that's where my brain is.
Hopefully other teams in the NFC continue to lose. So
yeah,
that's pretty much going to do it for this video, guys. Again, it's going to be a fun game. Again, no disrespect to Jags fans. I do think it's still a really interesting matchup. There are still players on that side of the football that I'm at least excited to see. I am excited to see Trayvon Walker. Again, I hope he doesn't wreck the game, but I'm excited to see how he's been progressing as a draft pick. And again, someone that is leading that defense really well. And it's going to be interesting to see Brian Thomas as well. So going to be a fun game. Let us know in the comment section below. What are your score predictions for this matchup? We haven't given ours yet. I'll probably sit somewhere around like 31-12, something.
12. I like the random number. I was going to go like 31-17. Keep it 12. 12 I like, though. Maybe they go for 2 one time.
Baby. 4 field goals.
Man, that'd be tough. But yeah, I'm with you. I just hope everyone stays healthy. I don't have anything against Jags fans. Or the Jaguars, fellow feline team, so we're up in there, but I'm with you.
Yeah, so that's going to do it for this video. Let us know in the comment section what your score prediction for the game is. What are some things that you, as a Lions fan, are, keeping an eye on when it comes to Jacksonville? If you're a Jags fan watching this, what are some things that you're worried about or that you're concerned about with the Lions? And feel free to let us know where you think we're wrong about, like, hey, why you think your team could possibly win this game on Sunday. So, again, no animosity here. No one's going to laugh at you in the comments. So, again, feel free to share your football takes, however you so see fit. Also, if you're looking for any more Lions content, all you have to do is head over to prideofdetroit.com. There will be new articles being posted all week. especially if you're interested in injury news. Like we said, we were talking about Taylor Decker. If you want to know who's going to potentially be active come game day, Pride of Detroit is going to be one of the first places you're going to check to be able to have that news. But with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.